Welcome, gents. When people can't place you in a box, they panic. And when you don't care to be understood, they label you as a threat. That's the life of a Sigma male. You've probably felt it your whole life without always having the words for it. You never followed the script everyone else was reading from. You didn't force yourself to fit into groups that felt off. You questioned things. You listened more than you spoke. And you trusted your gut, even when it led you away from the crowd. People don't always know what to make of someone like you. You're not loud, but you're not invisible either. You don't seek approval, but you're deeply aware of who you are. You can be kind without being soft. You can be detached without being cruel. And you can walk away without leaving a mess behind. That kind of control over yourself unsettles people. It breaks their patterns. They're used to others being easy to read, easy to sway, easy to categorize, but you move differently. You act when it matters. You speak when it's necessary. You don't need the spotlight to feel solid. You've built your identity in silence. They didn't know how to predict your next move, so instead of trying to understand, they called you dangerous. But that's only because you're not easy to control. And in a world that runs on control, your freedom is your power. You are not the threat. You are the reminder that they are not in charge of your story. Let's get started, gents. Number one, you broke the script they were comfortable with. People don't like what they can't predict. They've built their lives around patterns, expectations, and labels. When someone shows up who doesn't follow that rhythm, it rattles them. And that someone is you. You didn't play the roles they expected. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't try to fit their definition of success, popularity, or power. You simply did what made sense to you, quietly, precisely. And that shook them more than any loud rebellion ever could. People fear what doesn't fit into their boxes. They call it odd, mysterious, dangerous. Why? Because if they can't label you, they can't control how to deal with you. And if they can't control you, they feel threatened. You're the guy who doesn't chase the spotlight, but ends up standing out anyway. You're the one who listens more than you talk. Yet your presence says more than most people's words. Think about it. You don't fake smiles to blend in at every table. You don't laugh at jokes just to make people like you. You don't stick around in places that drain your peace. That kind of clarity makes people uncomfortable because most of them are still trying to figure out who they are. You live on your terms, not out of pride, but out of deep self-awareness. And in a world that thrives on imitation, that's rare, that's powerful. That's what makes you Sigma. You broke their script, not because you had something to prove, but because you had something real to protect. Your time, your values, your mind. So when they couldn't predict your next move, they gave up trying to understand and just called you dangerous. But here's the truth. You're not dangerous because you're unpredictable. You're dangerous because you're unshakably real. Number two, you don't just survive the fire, you become it. Most people run from the fire. They avoid anything that burns, anything uncomfortable, anything that forces them to change. But you didn't. You walked straight into it. And not because you enjoy pain or struggle, but because you knew that sometimes the only way to rebuild yourself is to let everything false burn away. They saw your silence and thought you were broken. They assumed you were lost or defeated because you weren't screaming or begging for attention. But what they didn't understand is that your silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning. It was your cocoon. It was the space where you stripped off everything fake, everything weak, everything borrowed from other people. And what you came back as, they weren't ready for that. You didn't come back needing applause. You didn't come back asking to be seen. You came back with eyes that see everything, a mind sharper than ever, and a spirit that doesn't flinch anymore. People expected you to be softer after the storm, more agreeable, more dependent. But the fire didn't break you. It burned away the lies. It showed you who you really are. It made you immune to the games, the noise, the fake smiles. Think of the quiet moments where you were alone, doubted, overlooked. You didn't just survive those moments. You studied in them. You leveled up in them. You became someone they can't shake, someone who doesn't panic, someone who sees through the surface. They can't touch you now, not because you built walls, but because you became the fire itself, controlled, powerful, and not to be played with. You didn't return for revenge, you returned with clarity, and that alone makes you unstoppable. Number three, you don't need permission to think for yourself. You were never the type to nod just to keep the peace. If something doesn't sit right with you, you question it. Not to be difficult, not to stir things up, but because you genuinely want to understand. You don't take things at face value. You listen, you process, and if something feels off, you're not afraid to speak up or walk away. Most people don't get that. They're used to fake agreement. They're used to people going along with the crowd just to stay liked or safe. So when someone like you comes around, someone who thinks independently, asks real questions, and isn't afraid of being the only one with a different view, it makes them uncomfortable. You don't argue just to be right. You speak because your mind doesn't settle for surface answers. Whether it's in relationships, work, or conversations, you're always digging deeper. And that kind of thinking, that shakes people. Because most folks have built their lives around ideas they never even challenged. Take a group setting, for example. Everyone's praising a new idea or plan. You sit back, you observe, and then calmly you ask, but does that actually make sense? Suddenly the room shifts, not because you were rude, but because you were real. And being real in a world full of filters and performance is seen as rebellion. You don't live to be agreeable, you live to be aligned with truth, with reason, with your gut. And sometimes that means standing alone. But you've made peace with that. Because the freedom to think for yourself is worth more than approval from people who don't even know who they are. You're not difficult, you're just done pretending. And that's not a problem, that's your power. Number 4, you're allergic to fake harmony. As a Sigma male, you can spot fake peace from a mile away. You know the difference between real calm and silent tension. That uncomfortable kind of peace where everyone is smiling on the surface but holding back what they really feel. Most people stay in that space because it's easier, because rocking the boat might upset someone. But not you. You'd rather flip the boat than pretend the water isn't rising. You don't pretend everything's fine when it isn't. You're not going to smile through disrespect or stay quiet when something's off. If something doesn't feel right, you speak up or step away. And that's exactly what makes people uncomfortable. They're used to others swallowing their truth for the sake of comfort. You don't do that. You're not built for that kind of performance. Think about how most people deal with conflict. They avoid it. They bury it under small talk and polite smiles, but you see through all of that. You see what's not being said, and instead of playing along, you'd rather face it. If a friendship is fake, you walk. If a relationship is full of pretense, you'd rather be alone. It's not because you enjoy chaos, it's because you value real peace. And real peace doesn't come from pretending, it comes from truth, even if that truth is uncomfortable, even if it breaks something. You believe in fixing what's broken, not covering it up with forced niceness. That kind of mindset sets you apart. People may call you cold or difficult, but the truth is you're just tired of the lies people tell themselves and each other. You want depth, honesty, substance. And if getting that means letting things fall apart, you're fine with that. Because for you, fake peace is no peace at all. Number 5, you became dangerous the day you stopped reacting. As a Sigma male, you learned something most people never do. You realized that not every insult deserves your energy. Not every challenge needs a response. You stopped jumping into every argument trying to prove you were right. You started choosing peace over ego in that shift. That made you powerful in a way most people don't understand. People expect reactions. They expect you to defend yourself, to explain, to fight back. But when you don't, when you simply pause, look at them and choose silence, they don't know what to do with that. Your calm becomes unsettling, your silence speaks volumes, you're no longer trying to win, you're just not playing. Let's be real. It's easy to react. It's easy to snap when someone disrespects you or misunderstands you. But you grew past that. You realize that your time and mental space are too valuable to waste proving anything to people who are committed to missing the point. That's where your detachment comes in. You walk away not because you're weak, but because you know you could destroy someone with the truth. But you no longer care enough to bother. That's next level power. That's a man who knows his worth. Maybe someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they expected a version of you that used to bite back. But now, you just look at them with that stillness that says, I've seen this before, and you move on. That unbothered presence, that's what makes you dangerous. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to prove you're right to know you are. You've stepped into a space where your silence carries more weight than their loudest argument. That's when they stop seeing you as quiet and start seeing you as untouchable. Number 6, your intuition unnerves people. As a Sigma male, you don't just listen to what people say, you notice what they don't say. You pick up on tone, body language, timing, energy shifts. You read the whole room in seconds without trying, and that makes people nervous. Not because you're loud or confrontational, but because they know you see things most people miss. You're the type who can have a 2-minute conversation with someone and walk away already knowing their fears, insecurities, and hidden motives. You don't need long stories or over-explaining. Your gut speaks fast and clear. And the truth is, most people aren't used to being around someone who actually sees through them. That's why some people feel uncomfortable around you, even if you haven't said a word. It's not that you're being rude, it's just that your presence feels too honest. They sense that you can tell when they're lying, they know you're not easily fooled, and that unsettles them, especially if they're used to wearing masks. Ever notice how some people start rambling or getting defensive around you, even when you haven't accused them of anything? That's because your silence puts pressure on their mask. They feel exposed. They feel like they're being watched by someone who's already figured them out. Your intuition is your quiet superpower. You don't announce it, you don't wave it around, you just sit with it, and it does the work for you. People don't know how to fake it around you, and that's exactly what makes you unforgettable. You don't need to speak much, your eyes already said enough. Number 7, you can't be seduced by titles, fame, or popularity. As a Sigma male, your self-worth doesn't come from shiny labels or public applause. You don't chase influence just to be recognized. You're not impressed by someone's job title or follower count. You care about substance, not the surface. And that alone makes you untouchable in a world addicted to validation. Most people are easy to manipulate. Give them a little attention, a fancy title, or some fake praise, and they'll do anything to keep it. But you see straight through the game. You know how quickly status fades, how fake popularity feels, and how hollow fame really is when it's built on pretense. That's why none of it moves you. You're not the guy who's going to change his values just to sit at someone else's table. You'd rather eat alone than pretend to be impressed. That's what makes people uneasy around you. They don't know how to influence someone who doesn't crave their approval. Think about it. The moment you walked away from chasing the spotlight, you stepped into real power. The kind of power that comes from being centered, grounded, and free from needing anyone to clap for you. That kind of independence can't be bought, and it sure can't be controlled. They can't figure you out because you're not playing their game. You don't want what they think everyone wants. You want truth, purpose, and peace. The moment they realize they have nothing to offer you that could lure you in, they label you as distant or dangerous, but you're not dangerous because you're cold. You're dangerous because you're free, and nothing scares people more than someone who can't be owned. Number 8, your kindness has edges. You're not trying to win anyone over with fake charm. You're not bending over backwards to be liked. Your kindness comes from strength, not weakness. You treat people well because it's who you are, not because you're afraid of being disliked. But here's the part that throws people off. The moment you sense disrespect, you switch off that kindness like a light. No warning, no explanation, you just leave it behind and keep moving. As a Sigma male, you don't hand out endless chances. You don't confuse being nice with being naive. People often test boundaries to see how much they can get away with. And when they try that with you, they quickly find out that you're not afraid to cut ties even in the middle of a sentence, even in the middle of a smile. You don't do guilt trips. You don't stick around trying to convince anyone that you're a good guy. You don't need to. You already know who you are. You give people respect, honesty, and loyalty, but only while it's mutual. The second it turns one-sided, you detach without blinking. That's what makes your kindness so rare. It's not performative, it's not desperate, it's real. And it comes with boundaries that most people aren't used to. They're used to people who beg to be liked. But you're not built like that. You'd rather be misunderstood than disrespected. So when someone experiences your kindness, they better know it's a privilege, not a loophole they can exploit. Because once they show you they don't value it, you're gone. Not angry, not bitter, just gone. And that quiet exit, that's what reminds them your kindness was never weakness. It was strength wrapped in patience with very sharp edges. Number 9, you're not angry, you're just done explaining. There's a calm that hits when you finally realize you don't owe anyone an explanation. You've reached that point. You're not bitter. You're not holding a grudge. You're just tired of repeating yourself to people who never really listened in the first place. As a Sigma male, your energy is intentional. You don't move impulsively. If you distance yourself, there's a reason. If you say no, it's not up for negotiation. But most people can't handle that kind of clarity. They want long explanations, emotional breakdowns, and justifications they can argue with. You've grown past that phase. You've learned that over-explaining drains you, and most of the time people don't want the truth. They want to feel right. So now you let your silence speak, and it speaks volumes. They'll call you cold, distant, maybe even arrogant. But what they're really reacting to is the fact that you stopped giving them access to your mind. You no longer feel the need to translate your peace for people who only understand chaos. Think about all the times you tried to explain your boundaries, your values, your need for space. How often did it really change anything? How often did they truly get it? Probably not often. That's why you stopped talking, not because you gave up, but because you leveled up. Your silence now is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the result of knowing that real understanding doesn't need 1,000 words. And if someone still doesn't get you after everything, maybe they were never meant to. You're not mad. You're just unavailable for nonsense. And that kind of detachment, that's what makes you powerful, quiet, focused, untouchable. Number 10, you operate outside their emotional manipulation tactics. People don't know what to do with someone they can't control emotionally. That's where you stand. As a Sigma male, you've done the inner work. You've faced your shadows. You've sat in your silence long enough to understand yourself without needing outside validation. That's why guilt trips, shame games, and emotional traps don't work on you. You don't react just because someone plays the victim. You don't feel pressured when someone tries to make you responsible for their emotions. You see the pattern, call it for what it is, and step out of it calmly, cleanly, and without the drama. And when you don't fall for it, they start throwing labels: cold, distant, heartless. But here's the truth. You're not cold. You're just clear. You know the difference between healthy emotion and emotional manipulation. You've learned to recognize when someone's trying to use guilt to keep you around, shame to silence you, or gaslighting to confuse your reality. You don't get pulled into the storm. You watch it from a distance, unshaken. They hate that they can't bend you, that they can't use your empathy as a weapon against you, that you don't jump through hoops just to keep the peace. That's why they paint you as the villain, because they can't use the usual tricks, and that scares them. Let someone else chase approval. Let someone else apologize for existing. You've chosen peace over performance, and that's what makes you powerful. You're not playing their emotional chess game. You've already walked off the board. Number 11, you're self-correcting. You don't need someone clapping for you to get better. You don't need a crowd cheering you on before you decide to level up. You don't even need someone pointing out your flaws. You've already seen them. You've already faced them. That's what makes you different. As a Sigma male, your growth happens behind closed doors. No announcements, no validation. You mess up, you reflect, you adjust, quietly, consistently. While others are busy defending their mistakes or pretending they're perfect, you're already breaking down your own patterns, figuring out where you slipped and what needs to change. You don't need to be told you can do better. You expect it from yourself. Not out of pressure, but out of self-respect. You hold yourself accountable in ways most people wouldn't even think of, because you know that growth isn't something you show off. It's something you live. And that's why people often don't realize just how much you've changed until it's too late. While they were watching your old version, you were becoming someone new. While they thought you were standing still, you were sharpening everything: your mindset, your focus, your habits. You're not chasing applause, you're chasing alignment. You'd rather be better in silence than praised in public for a version of you that isn't real. This is why your progress hits different. Because it wasn't built on ego or attention, it was built on truth, on discipline, on moments no one saw but changed everything. You're not waiting for someone to tell you to evolve. You already have. And when the world catches up, they'll realize you were never seeking their approval. You were seeking mastery. Number 12. You're not mysterious, you're just ungoverned. People love to throw around the word mysterious when they talk about you. But the truth is, you're not some puzzle to solve. You're not hiding anything. You're just not offering yourself up for inspection. You're not playing the game they want you to play. That's the part they can't handle. You're not hard to understand. You've got values, clarity, and direction. You just don't announce your every thought or move. You don't broadcast your life for likes or explain your decisions to gain approval. That's not mystery, that's discipline, that's control, that's freedom. The real issue is that you're hard to control. You don't fall in line just because everyone else is doing it. You don't change your tone to make someone more comfortable. And you don't dress up your truth to be more palatable. That kind of self-possession is rare and it throws people off. We live in a world that thrives on categories, definitions, and rules. Be this, say that, act this way, or you're labeled difficult. But you don't fit, you never did. And instead of bending to belong, you chose to stand alone. That choice made you powerful. You are the glitch in the system. The one who moves without asking, the one who thrives without clinging, the one who listens to himself first. That's not mystery. That's what happens when a man refuses to be owned. You are not lost, you're just free. In final words, people don't fear the loud ones. They fear the ones they can't figure out. And that's exactly who you are. You're not here to be predictable. You're not here to follow a script someone else wrote. You didn't ask for approval. You didn't wait for permission. You chose your own path, even when it was quieter, harder, or lonelier. And in doing so, you became something most people aren't ready to face: free. They called you dangerous, not because you're reckless or hostile, but because they couldn't understand you. You didn't play their games. You didn't follow their rules. You made your own moves, and that made you unpredictable. To the world that depends on control, structure, and approval, your independence was threatening. But here's the truth. Being a Sigma male is not about being distant or detached for no reason. It's about being deeply in tune with yourself. It's about knowing who you are without needing someone else to confirm it. You're not moved by noise. You're not guided by trends. You walk with clarity. This path isn't for everyone, and that's the point. It's not easy to stay grounded in a world that wants you to perform. It's not easy to hold your boundaries when others expect you to bend, but that's where your strength lives. Not in loud rebellion, but in quiet resistance. So if they call you hard to read, mysterious, or even dangerous, let them. They're finally seeing the truth. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to move differently. That's not something to apologize for. That's something to honor. Keep building in silence. Keep growing without needing credit. And never forget, some of the strongest forces in the world move quietly, but change everything. You're one of them. Thank you for watching, gents, and God bless you.